sports talk show covering football and professional wrestling. I'm your host, the Encyclopedia Sports Cool Hand Luke96. Be sure, if you haven't done so already, to like, follow, and subscribe to Gridiron Ring and myself, Cool Hand Luke96, on social media. As always, the links are in the description below. NFL New Year began the other day, Wednesday, March the 13th, 2019, at 4 p.m. Eastern Time. But, however, most teams decided this year, it seemed like, to negotiate as they were allowed to with players that were on their team last year or elsewhere. This past Monday, my birthday, March the 11th, 2019, at noon Eastern Time. So it seemed like every deal that went down was all said and done with before the 4 p.m. Kickoff for the NFL New Year for 2019. So I'm going to get into all the deals that I have at the time of this recording. There could be some that go down after this, maybe some during the recording. If there is, I'll have breaking news for you there. But if there's anything that happens afterwards, I will not have that. So if you know about a free agent signing or a trade that went down in the National Football League, the NFL, after this recording, by the way, today is the 16th of March. Happy 316 day to everybody out there. Give me a oh hell yeah. But so if there's anything that happens afterwards and you guys know about it, feel free to drop those down in the comments below. You can also hit me up on Twitter at CoolHandLuke96 or GridRing18 on social media as well. As I said, the links are in the description below. So NFL free agency began this past Wednesday. Teams were allowed to negotiate starting this past Monday the 11th, and it seemed like everything was said and done with. I'll get to all the signings here in a second, but there has been a lot that has happened since the Patriots defeated the Rams in Super Bowl 53 by a score of 13-3 down in Atlanta, Georgia. We had 8 franchises hire new head coaches. The Cardinals hired former Texas Tech head coach Cliff Kingsbury. Bengals hired former Nebraska quarterback and most recently the LA Rams offensive coordinator Zach Taylor. Browns promoted their offensive coordinator Freddie Kitchens to head coach. The Broncos hired Vic Fangio, the most recently defense coordinator for the Chicago Bears. Packers Matt LaFleur, offensive coordinator in Tennessee. Take his talents from Marcus Mariota now to Aaron Rodgers. That's a huge upgrade for him. Dolphins hired defense coordinator from the New England Patriots, Brian Flores. The Jets actually hired former Dolphins head coach Adam Gase, and then the Buccaneers got Bruce Arians to come out of retirement to come coach their ball club. So Kingsbury, Taylor, Kitchens, Fangio, LaFleur, Flores, Gase, and Arians are head coaches now in the National Football League. Now, one of the first things these new head coaches and front office executives, along with the other current head coaches and execs in the NFL, they go over, obviously, their current roster for whatever ball club they're coaching or a part of, the roster from the previous season as well, and then basically decide throughout the franchise, does this player, fit our system? Does this player fit the scheme that we want to run? And once they figure that out, and also the money situation, the cap space that they have available for whatever ball club it is, the first thing I believe you have to do is re-sign the players that you think are going to be beneficial to your team the next season, 2019 now. Now, if you can't re-sign him, he'll more than likely become a free agent, but you could still potentially sign him by placing the franchise tag on him for a larger amount for 1 year if you can't agree on a long-term deal by the middle of July. And that date this year is actually July the 15th. So if you place the franchise tag on a player, you have until July 15th to come to a long-term agreement, or else that player will be on the franchise tag for the next season. And actually, 6 different teams place franchise tags on respective players this year. Those were the Seahawks, Texans, Chiefs, 49ers, Falcons, and Cowboys. The Seahawks on Frank Clark, Texans, Jadeveon Clowney. D Ford went to Kansas City, but then got traded to San Francisco. Robbie Gould was San Francisco, Atlanta, Grady Jarrett, and then DeMarcus Lawrence in Dallas for the second consecutive year. So we'll have to see what happens with those 6 players, if they will play under the franchise tag this year, or if they can come to a long-term agreement with their respective teams. As I said, D Ford was placed under the franchise tag in Kansas City with the Chiefs, but then the Chiefs decided to trade him to the San Francisco 49ers, and then he ended up signing a 5-year, $87.5 million extension with San Fran. So D Ford is now out in San Francisco. So San Francisco, it might seem like there that they have 2 players underneath the franchise tag, but however they only have one, and it is their kicker, the Lock Haven native, Penn State grad, former Chicago Bear great Robbie Gould. So Gould's out in San Francisco, still kicking for the 49ers. Now, the next thing that happens during the offseason after the Super Bowl, which was about a month and a half ago now, hard to believe, but I'm happy I'm talking about NFL right now. So the next thing that happens during the offseason that already took place was the NFL Scouting Combine. If you didn't know what the NFL Combine is, all it is basically just an event that takes place every single year, I believe 32, 33 years running now, in Indianapolis, Indiana, at Lucas Oil Stadium now, formerly the RCA Dome, which was right next door. They tore it down, now a parking lot. But that's where the Colts play at. And this is where NFL teams see up-and-coming talent from the college level, NFL hopefuls, work out and interview for NFL teams. And also going on right now as well, college pro days. And basically the pro day is the same thing that takes place at the Combine, just interviews and working out for teams to see what your draft stock is for the NFL draft. That'll be coming up at the end of April the 25th. That's when it begins. That will be the first round. And then the second and third will be on day 2, day 3, rounds 4 through 7 in Nashville, Tennessee this year. So the big thing, though, during the NFL offseason is, other than the draft, obviously, is this time right now, NFL free agency frenzy, as they like to call it, when teams finally have a option to either re-sign, sign, trade players if they wish. So, as I said a little bit ago, it seemed like a lot of teams really did everything before the official start, but the NFL at the same time gave them a negotiation period for about 2.5 days, starting this past Monday, March the 11th. So I'm going to get into all the signings, all the transactions here now, all the signings, re-signings, trades that went down the past couple days. Like I said, I'm recording this now, Saturday afternoon, March the 16th. 2019. I let a couple days go by before I got all my notes in order and whatnot to go through and actually basically just give you my thoughts and opinions, just discuss everything that has happened the past couple days during the start of the 2019 NFL new year. So hopefully you guys enjoy. If you do, be sure to hit the thumbs up button, like, follow, and subscribe to Gridiron Ring and myself, Cool Hand Luke 96, on social media. Links in the description. So how I'm going to do this, I'm going to do it team by team, and we'll start out west with the Arizona Cardinals. They have the number 1 overall pick in this year's draft. They actually traded for Pittsburgh Steelers tackle Marcus Gilbert for a 6th round pick in this year's draft. So Gilbert goes to Arizona. Pittsburgh gets a 6th round pick in return. The Cardinals also signed offensive guard J.R. Sweezy to a 2-year deal after he played for the Seattle Seahawks and Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Brett Hundley, they signed him to a 1-year deal as well. He played for the Packers and most recently Seattle. So he'll come in as of now and back up quarterback Josh Rosen, who, and he's in the news right now. He very well could be traded from now up until the draft, maybe on draft night. I think what's going to happen there, I think Rosen will get traded, and I think it's going to be with Oakland. But however, I don't think Rosen is going to go to Oakland. I think Arizona is going to make a couple moves with 2 different teams. One somewhere with Rosen. The Raiders, though, I think, because they have 3 first-round picks, 1 of their own, 1 from Dallas with the Amari Cooper trade from last year, 1 with Chicago for the Khalil Mack trade at the beginning of last season. I think the Raiders, they'll trade one of their first-round picks, probably the number 4 overall pick, and Derek Carr, their quarterback right now. Derek Carr, who they drafted out of Fresno State, who he's battled a couple injuries the past couple years. Who knows if Gruden really likes him, because you really can't get a clear read on that, especially with Gruden only being back in Oakland for a year. And then, obviously now going into his second year, I think this is what's going to happen. I think Oakland's going to trade number 4 and Derek Carr to Arizona so they can draft Kyler Murray number 1 overall, have Murray be their quarterback as they move into the future, moving to Las Vegas in a couple years. And then in the meantime as well, like I said, Arizona trades Josh Rosen somewhere, maybe the Giants, maybe somewhere else, but I think that's what's going to happen at this point in time. I could change my mind from now until the draft. We'll have to find out and see. Cool Hand Luke 96 on social media. That's where I'll have more updates. So the Cardinals, actually as well, let me know down in the comments below what you think about that. So the Cardinals, they re-signed long-time wide receiver Larry Fitzgerald back to a 1-year, $11 million deal. They actually brought in Terrell Suggs on a 1-year deal as well, worth $7 million after he has played his entire 16-year NFL career with the Baltimore Ravens. But he's going home now. He played his college ball at Arizona State. Also brought in tight end Charles Clay on a 1-year deal alongside Brooks Reed, and then cornerback, Robert Alford on a 3-year, $22.5 million deal after he played the last 6 seasons in Atlanta. And then as I was just about ready to go on, I heard that wide receiver, former top pick, number 4 overall a couple years ago by the Chicago Bears, Kevin White, former West Virginia product, I heard that he is expected to sign with Arizona. So if he can stay healthy, he'd be a good number 2, maybe 3 or 4 wide receiver alongside Larry Fitzgerald. Cliff Kingsbury, offensive-minded coach, now the head coach in Arizona. He's also going to have running back David Johnson coming back, wide receiver Christian Kirk, who they drafted out of Texas A&M last year in the first round, Hassan Reddick from Temple on the defensive side, a linebacker, former first-round pick, and then Patrick Peterson as well at the safety position. So the future is bright for Arizona. It's really all going to depend on what they do with Josh Rosen with the top pick. Do they trade Rosen and draft Kyler Murray? Do they keep Rosen and who the hell knows what they do with the number 1 pick at that point? I mean, Nick Bosa's there. If they want to go defense, have Bosa and Reddick and Peterson on the defensive side, and see what Kingsbury can do with Rosen on offense. If they can work their magic together. The thing with Kingsbury and Kyler Murray, they've known each other for I don't know how many years. Murray actually turned him down recruiting-wise in college to attend a different school. So future's bright for Arizona, but it's going to be a couple more years, I think, until they can get back into the playoffs. But it's all going to start with what they do with the top pick in this year's NFL draft. The Atlanta Falcons, and I'm just going to do this alphabetically, team by team. So if you're a Pittsburgh Steelers fan, I know everybody's either pissed or happy that they got rid of Antonio Brown and Le'Veon Bell, let him walk in free agency. If you're a Steelers fan, a Redskin fan, you're going to be waiting for a while. So you can just skip ahead if you just want to, hear what I have to say about each respective team, your favorite team. Go ahead and do that. But I'm going to be doing this alphabetically, so hopefully you will stay tuned throughout this entire episode of my thoughts and opinions on NFL free agency 2019. So the Atlanta Falcons, as I said a moment ago, they franchise tagged Grady Jarrett. That'll come in at $15.2 million for this year. Only this year if they cannot decide on a long-term deal by July the 15th. They also brought in some help for Matt Ryan, some protection. James Carpenter on the offensive line, along with Jamon Brown, who they signed on 4- and 3-year deals respectively, worth $21 and $18.75 million. And then they also re-signed Ty Sambrailo on a 3-year, $18 million deal. Kenyon Barner, former Oregon running back, he will be signing a 1-year deal, I saw as well. And then they re-signed backup quarterback Matt Schaub, who's been around for a while, to a 2-year deal to come back and back up Matt Ryan. So Matt Ryan still going to be there at running back, Devontae Freeman at running back, coming off a injury, alongside Julio Jones and Calvin Ridley at wide receiver. Baltimore Ravens now, they really haven't done a whole lot, but they have made some big moves, and the moves that they've made, they re-signed tight end Nick Boyle, who they drafted out of Delaware a couple years ago, re-signed him 3-year, $18 million, and then they signed running back Mark Ingram and safety Earl Thomas away from the Saints and Seahawks respectively after they played their entire careers there on a 3-year, $15 million deal for Ingram, and then a 4-year, $55 million deal for Earl Thomas. So another member of Seattle's Legion of Boom is gone. Now, the quarterback for the Ravens coming back will be Lamar Jackson, who they drafted in the last pick of the first round last year out of Louisville. But the big thing with me right now with Baltimore is the big question. What are they going to do at wide receiver? Because they cut Michael Crabtree. Basically, the only receiver they have is Willie Snead. Chris Moore's still there as well, and he's reliable. Both of them are. But I get you re-sign Nick Boyle, your check down guy, but they also lost C.J. Mosley on the defensive side, along with Eric Weddle, but they replaced Weddle with Earl Thomas. So the middle of the defense, Darius Smith also left, went to Green Bay. That's a big question for me with Baltimore, along with the wide receiving core for the Baltimore Ravens. So far, I've really liked what the Buffalo Bills have done. They've gotten some help for second-year quarterback now, Josh Allen. They signed a couple receivers, a running back, a tight end as well, and then a center, Mitch Morse, coming over from Kansas City, 4-year, $44.5 million deal. The wide receivers they signed, both reliable, role-playing, deep threats in the NFL. More so a deep threat with John Brown, who they signed away from Baltimore, drafted out of Pittsburgh State a couple years ago by Arizona. I was surprised he didn't sign with Tampa Bay because Bruce Arians drafted him. But then when Arians was still the head coach in Arizona, he left to go to Baltimore. And then obviously Arians back in the league now at Tampa Bay. But the Buffalo Bills, they signed Cole Beasley to a 4-year deal worth $29 million after he played his entire career in Dallas. He's more of the role player. He's a good receiver to count on. So look for Josh Allen to Cole Beasley a lot this upcoming year. And then wide receiver John Brown, 3-year deal, $27 million. As I said, after he drafted out of Pittsburgh State to the Cardinals, then signed with the Ravens. He's more your deep threat, good fantasy player as well. And then Frank Gore, yes, he's still around, was deciding on retiring. He did not. He decided to come back. Running back Frank Gore to the Buffalo Bills on a 1-year, $2 million deal after he played most of his career out west with San Francisco and then in Indianapolis with the Colts for a couple years before being down in Miami last year and the year before. So ground and pound is what Buffalo's looking to do, it seems like, because they also signed Tyler Kroft, who's a good receiving tight end, but also a good blocking tight end. So it looks like Buffalo is going to be in the eye a lot this year with second-year quarterback Josh Allen out of Wyoming. So yeah, Tyler Kroft, 3-year, $18.5 million after he played with Cincinnati. So far I've liked what the Bills have done, and at this point in time, I really don't think a lot of teams are going to be signing a lot more at this point. I mean, they might be signing some guys after the draft, obviously with undrafted rookie free agents, but then come after OTAs, middle of the summer, right before training camp, if somebody gets hurt during training camp as well, that's when we'll see a lot more former players in the league, whether they decided to retire or they're just out there and no one signed them. That's when we'll start to see teams go after those players and sign those players to deals for next year. Carolina and Cincinnati really haven't done a whole lot. Carolina, they signed center Matt Paradis away from Denver, 3-year, $27 million. They also re-signed safety Eric Reed, though, 3 years, $21 million. And then Cincinnati tight end C.J. Uzma re-signed him, 3 years, $18 million. And then they also signed a William & Mary product who has really bounced around the league, now on his 7th team, B.W. Webb. They signed him to a 3-year, $13 million deal. So he's going to Cincinnati. The Cleveland Browns, though, the other team in the state of Ohio, they've been the one who's been making noise. They traded for wide receiver, a great playmaker, but also a drama queen at the same time. Wide receiver Odell Beckham Jr. was traded to the Cleveland Browns from the New York Football Giants, along with, and these were actually two different trades, but they just made it one when it was all said and done, along with defensive end Olivier Vernon in exchange for safety former Michigan product Jabril Peppers and offensive guard Kevin Zeitler, and a first and third round pick in this year's draft. So Cleveland gets Odell and Olivier Vernon for Peppers and Zeitler for a first and third round pick in 2019 NFL draft. They also signed, Cleveland Browns did, defensive tackle Sheldon Richardson, 3-year, $36 million, after he played for the Jets, Seahawks, and Vikings respectively. And then they also signed former number 2 overall pick by the Rams, Greg Robinson, re-signed him to a 1-year, $9 million deal. And then what else the Browns do? Well, they still have Baker Mayfield at quarterback, Nick Chubb and Duke Johnson at running back, Odell Beckham Jr. now alongside former LSU teammate Jarvis Landry in Cleveland at wide receiver, David Njoku, former Miami Hurricane tight end, Myles Garrett and Olivier Vernon on the defensive end now, defensive line at the defensive end spot. But they also signed former Kansas City Chief, former Toledo running back Kareem Hunt, who was cut by the Chiefs. It was right after Thanksgiving, I believe, because they had a bye week in there as well, right after they played the Rams on Monday Night Football. If you guys can remember that shootout out in Los Angeles at the Coliseum. So I think it was like the first week of December when they cut Kareem Hunt, because there was a video that came out about him at a Cleveland hotel, by the way, actually, too, of him throwing a woman to the ground. So they cut him. He was actually just suspended for 8 games this year as well. So a 1-year, $1 million deal for Kareem Hunt. But once he comes back from his 8-game suspension, we'll have to see if he's as good as he once was. The Chicago Bears, they did some deals with a couple players. Not a whole lot, but they helped out more so on the offensive side with Matt Nagy now going into his second year. The Bears actually made the playoffs, won the division for the first time in 8 years this past year. So they brought in running back Mike Davis on a 2-year deal worth $6 million. Wide receiver Cordell Patterson, former Viking as well. So Bears fans should remember him very well. Hurt the Bears a lot during his time in Minneapolis. Also played with the Oakland Raiders and most recently the New England Patriots. Cordell Patterson, 2-year, $10 million deal for him. He'll help out in the return game a lot. And then they helped out Mitch Trubisky as well. They re-signed offensive lineman Bobby Massey to a 4-year, $32 million extension. So he'll be coming back to protect Mitch Trubisky next year. And then they signed HaHa Clinton-Dix, former Packer. So Bears fans should remember him very well as well. HaHa Clinton-Dix, former Alabama great. He's going to Chicago after he was drafted by the Packers, then traded to the Redskins last year. The trade deadline, HaHa Clinton-Dix to Chicago on a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. So they'll still have Mitch Trubisky next year, and then Patterson will help out in the receiving game and return game as well, alongside Allen Robinson, Anthony Miller, and Taylor Gabriel. And then Khalil Mack, return of the Mack, Khalil Mack going into his second year now in Chicago. He's going to be a force to be reckoned with on the defensive side in the Windy City. Dallas Cowboys go down to the Big D. They, as I said earlier, they put the franchise tag on DeMarcus Lawrence for the second consecutive year. This year, that's worth $20 million. They actually got former tight end Jason Witten to come out of retirement, come out of the booth. He did Monday Night Football this past year with ESPN. They got him to come out of retirement to sign a 1-year, $3.5 million deal. So Dak Prescott has his tight end back now. Then Cameron Fleming, offensive tackle, re-signed for 2 years, $8.5 million. They also re-signed a wide receiver Tavon Austin to a 1-year deal, and then they restructured Sean Lee's deal as well. So he'll be returning to the Big D for his 10th consecutive season. The Denver Broncos traded for a reliable Super Bowl winning quarterback, that being former Raven quarterback now Joe Flacco. The Ravens traded Flacco to Denver in exchange for a 4th-round pick in this year's NFL draft. So Joe Flacco now the starting quarterback for the Denver Broncos. I'll get to what they did with Case Keenum here coming up in a little bit. The Denver Broncos also signed Kareem Jackson to a 3-year, $33 million deal, and they also got some protection for Joe Flacco. They signed offensive tackle Jawan James away from the Miami Dolphins to a 4-year, $51 million deal. And they also re-signed tight end Jeff Hireman to a 2-year, $9 million deal. So he'll be coming back, give a good check down threat to Joe Flacco. And then Emmanuel Sanders, Cortland Sutton, Deshaun Hamilton all coming back on the offensive side of the ball as well for Denver. And then they still got Bradley Chubb and Von Miller at both defensive end spots. So Denver, I mean, Joe Flacco, he's a decent quarterback. He's not, anything special, but he's still a Super Bowl winning quarterback. So Joe Flacco goes to Denver. Matt Patricia now going into his 2nd year in Detroit with the Lions, and he signed a couple guys that he thinks, along with all his assistant coaches and the entire Lion franchise, that they think obviously will help out the team moving forward. But it looks like Patricia, he's going back to his old habits when he was defensive coordinator in Foxborough with the New England Patriots. It looks like it's moving toward the new Lion way, going from the Patriot way that he was so used to under Bill Belichick. He actually signed a couple former Patriots, 2 deals during free agency frenzy here the past week. Defensive lineman Trey Flowers, 5-year, $90 million deal with the Detroit Lions now after coming over from the New England Patriots. Former Patriot wide receiver Danny Amendola as well on a 1-year, $4.5 million deal. He played with the Rams for a little bit, if you don't remember, before joining the Patriots, and then New England for a couple years, and then Miami last year. He'll be alongside Marvin Jones, who is still in Detroit. They traded Golden Tate at the trade deadline last year to Philly. He actually just signed with the Giants. I'll get to him in a second. And then once a Lion, always a Lion, Jesse James. He was originally from Pittsburgh, and he went to Penn State, almost transferred when all the sanctions hit back in 2012 right here in Happy Valley, but then got drafted by the Pittsburgh Steelers a couple years ago, has played his entire career in the Steel City, but he decided to sign a 4-year, $25 million deal with the Detroit Lions. So it looks like Patricia looking to a tight end like Jesse James to potentially be like a Rob Gronkowski moving forward. They also re-signed running back Zach Zenner to a 1-year deal, and he'll be in the backfield alongside Kerryon Johnson and Theo Riddick. Another NFC North squad, they really helped out their defense. I'm talking about the Green Bay Packers. They signed safety Adrian Amos, another Penn State product from Bill O'Brien's days, former Chicago Bear. They signed Amos to a 4-year, $37 million contract. Defensive end Preston Smith, 4 years, $52 million. And then, as I said earlier, Zadarius Smith leaves Baltimore to go to Green Bay on a 4-year, $66 million deal. Also got Aaron Rodgers some protection as well. Offensive lineman Billy Turner, 4 years, $29.5 million. Go down to the AFC South now. 3 of the 4 teams coming up here in a row. The Houston Texans, as I said, the Texans earlier, they franchise tagged Jadeveon Clowney. That will be $16 million this year. So both the Texas teams use the franchise tag. Bradley Roby then, Houston Texans, they signed him, cornerback Bradley Roby, to a 1-year, $10 million deal, former Bronco and Ohio State Buckeye under Urban Meyer. Indianapolis Colts, They re-signed kicker Adam Vinatieri. He'll be coming back for his a millionth season this upcoming year in the NFL. Re-signed him 1 year, $4 million, and then they gave Andrew Luck another weapon at wide receiver. Devin Funchess goes back to the Midwest, where he played his college ball up north in Ann Arbor, Michigan, with the Wolverines. Devin Funchess is now a Colt to go alongside T.Y. Hilton. Funchess 1 year, $10 million. So Andrew Luck, Marlon Mack, Nyheim Hines, Jordan Wilkins. The Colts, I guess a lot of people were thinking we're going to be on Le'Veon Bell. He decided to go elsewhere. They have Funchess and Hilton at wide receiver, and then Eric Ebron and Jack Doyle at tight end. Indianapolis Colts offense looks unstoppable on paper. Hence, I said on paper. That's why they play the games, folks. Jacksonville Jaguars, they got their quarterback for the future, it seems like. Quarterback Nick Foles, 4-year, $88 million deal after he led the Eagles to a Super Bowl victory along with a Super Bowl MVP a couple years ago when the Eagles defeated the New England Patriots in Super Bowl 52. Also played for the Rams and Chiefs during his career before coming back to Philly, where he was drafted at by now Chief head coach Andy Reid. That's the connection there with Andy Reid, Nick Foles, and Doug Peterson. Leonard Fournette also still in the backfield with Jacksonville, so it looks like Foles will be handing off to him a lot this year, open up the play-action pass, getting the ball deep down the field to their tight ends and wide receivers. Speaking of the Kansas City Chiefs, they released Eric Berry and Justin Houston, and they are still on the market, so they have not been signed by another team yet. But however, the Chiefs did sign running back Carlos Hyde to a 1-year, $3 million deal, former Ohio State running back as well. He was drafted in the second round a couple years ago by the 49ers. They decided not to re-sign him last year. He signed with Cleveland, and then the Browns ended up trading him to Jacksonville at the start of last year, and then Jacksonville didn't re-sign him. He signs with the Chiefs, so he'll be in the backfield with the Williams boys, Darrell and Damian Williams. So that offense looks spectacular as well. Pat Mahomes, Travis Kelce, Sammy Watkins, Tyreek Hill. He's also in the news right now for a alleged assault. And then safety Tyrann Mathieu, the Honey Badger, former LSU safety, played in Arizona alongside former teammate Patrick Peterson. He signed with the Texans last year on a $45 million deal, I believe it was. But they let him go after 1 year. He signs a 3-year, $42 million deal now with the KC Chiefs. So Tyrann Mathieu will be taking over for Eric Berry in the Chief secondary. Another AFC West squad, the Los Angeles Chargers, the LA Chargers, not the San Diego Chargers anymore. Their new stadium with the Rams, who will be coming up here next as well. Their new stadium being built, they should be in that within the next couple years. The LA Chargers, though, they went out and signed a backup quarterback for Phillip Rivers, Tyrod Taylor, 2 years, $11 million. He played at Virginia Tech, was drafted by the Baltimore Ravens, played in Buffalo for a little bit as well before being traded to Cleveland last year. So Cleveland 2 years in a row making moves. Last year the stuff during free agency, during the offseason, other than the drafting Baker Mayfield really didn't work out. A lot of those guys have moved on. And Cleveland, they went out and got Odell Beckham Jr. this year, like I said earlier, so we'll have to see moving forward if they can make the playoffs for the first time in forever. They were very, very close last year, but were a couple games shy. But Tyrod Taylor, former Brown quarterback before losing his job to Baker Mayfield, signs with the Chargers. The Chargers also signed former Panther linebacker Thomas Davis to a 2-year, $10.5 million deal. So Davis has played his entire career on the East Coast. He goes out to the West Coast now to play for the Chargers. The LA Rams, the Los Angeles Rams, who played in their first Super Bowl in almost 20 years this past year, losing once again to the New England Patriots 13-3. They went out and re-signed Dante Fowler Jr., who they traded for at the trade deadline this past year with the Jacksonville Jaguars. They still have him then, Michael Brockers, Aaron Donald, Marcus Peters, and Aqib Talib on that defense. So defense wins the championships. They came up a little bit shy in the Super Bowl about a month and a half ago to New England, as I said, 13-3. But LA will be back in the thick of it this upcoming year because they also signed Eric Weddle, safety Eric Weddle, away from the Baltimore Ravens. He went to Utah He was drafted by the San Diego Chargers, played in San Diego for a while before signing with Baltimore. So Weddle goes back out west in Los Angeles now with the Rams. He signed 2 years, $12.5 million, and he will be replacing LaMarcus Joyner, who ended up signing with the Oakland Raiders. Miami Dolphins go down to South Beach. New head coach Brian Flores, as I said, comes down from New England. Defense coordinator up there. He ended up bringing a former Patriot with him as well, cornerback Eric Rowe, 1 year, $3.5 million. Another former Utah Ute. He was drafted by Philly. Philly traded him right before the season. It was either last year or the year before, and he was up in New England then, and then now he's down in Miami now with the Miami Dolphins. Eric Rowe, 1 year, $3.5 million. And then they also signed Dwayne Allen, another former Patriot, along with being a Colt after playing his college ball at Clemson. Clemson's really turning into the next Alabama, it seems like, at the college level. Dwayne Allen, though, goes to Miami, 2 years, $7 million deal. The Dolphins now have a two-headed tight end system with Mike Gesicki and Dwayne Allen, with basically whoever the Dolphins quarterback will be moving forward, because I think right now it's Jake Rudock, which, okay, he was decent in college at Iowa and Michigan, and then he really never played in Detroit because Matthew Stafford was ahead of him. He was behind him. But Miami, they're probably going to draft somebody, to be honest with you. They might actually tank, though, this year, too. I've been hearing that a lot, to draft somebody with the first overall pick maybe next year, because next year's quarterback draft class is loaded. So we'll see what the Dolphins do, but this year they probably won't be that good, to be honest with you. Minnesota Vikings, they ended up re-signing linebacker Anthony Barr after he had a handshake agreement with the New York Jets, but he had a change of thought, decided to re-sign with Minnesota, so Barr will be a Viking once again next year. He re-signed 5 years, $68 million. They really couldn't do a whole lot this year, obviously cap space. They have Kirk Cousins on a 3-year, fully guaranteed $84 million deal. They missed the playoffs last year with them, so we'll have to see if they can get back to the NFC Championship game next year, a place they were 2 years ago with the quarterback Case Keenum, who is now in Washington with the Redskins after being traded from Denver to D.C. So they still have Cousins, who played in D.C. with the Redskins, quite frankly. Quite funny, too. They still have Stephon Diggs, and then Adam Thielen and Dalvin Cook on offense as well at wide receiver and running back, respectively. So Minnesota really hasn't done a whole lot. They normally like to try to build up through the draft, so we'll see what the Vikings do come the end of April. The draft, as I said, April the 25th through the 27th, 2019 in Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, USA. The New England Patriots, they traded for former Seahawk, another former Legion of Boom member from that defense, Michael Bennett, who was in Philadelphia this past year after the Seahawks traded him to Philly. Philly just traded him to New England, along with a 2020 next year's draft, a 2020 7th rounder for a 2020 5th rounder. So Michael Bennett now a New England Patriot. Patriots also did some re-signing. The only deal that they've basically done signing a player that was on a different squad last year was Bruce Ellington, 1-year deal for him. They re-signed wide receiver Philip Dorsett as well to another 1-year deal. Jason McCourty re-signed 2-year deal. Him and his brother Devin will still be in the Patriots secondary. And then Brandon Bolden, running back Brandon Bolden, will return on a 2-year deal after spending last year in Miami before spending his entire career before that up in Foxborough with the New England Patriots. So the Patriots, they still got Brady, they still got Sonny Michel, James White, Rex Burkhead, Rob Gronkowski, Kyle Van Noy on defense alongside Dante Hightower. The Patriots, they'll be fine. They'll be back in the thick of it next year, pending any season-ending injury by Tom Brady, because last time that happened, they didn't make the playoffs. So, I mean, they could go winless in the AFC East, and they'd probably still make the playoffs, for God's sakes. But as long as they go, say, 4-2, 5-1, even if they went undefeated in the AFC East with the Bills, Jets, and Dolphins, who the first two of those, on paper, it seems like they're getting better, minus the Dolphins. Dolphins, like I said, they'll probably suck again this year, to be honest with you. But I would like the Dolphins to be good in the future. Like, you just hate to have them be that new Cleveland Browns squad that is going to suck year in and year out. Because the Browns went through that for how long, and now it looks like they'll be winning a lot of games this upcoming year and making the playoffs for the first time in forever, like I said. But the Bills and the Jets, they seem like they're getting a little bit better. But New England could still go 500 in the division, 3-3, and they still make the playoffs. Now, I don't know who they play next year. I know the opponents are out, but I have not looked at that, nor will I up until they release the schedules a week before the draft. So about a month away from that, so I'll have a video for that out as well. So stay tuned for that. I'll have a NFL schedule discussion video out like I did last year, so stay tuned for that. Moving on now, I just got done talking about the New England Patriots. They still got Bill Belichick, as I said, so they'll be fine. He's a genius. He knows what the hell he's doing, even though a lot of people don't think he does know what he's doing. Hell, guy has 6 Super Bowl rings as a head football coach and 10 plus as a overall coach in the NFL. So the New Orleans Saints, then, they actually signed Malcolm Brown away from Foxborough. So Malcolm Brown, drafted out of Texas by New England a couple years ago, last pick in the first round. He leaves New England, goes to the Big Easy, a defensive tackle, Malcolm Brown, 3-year, $15 million deal. Will Lutz re-signed 5-year deal, and then the Saints also re-signed quarterback Teddy Bridgewater, 1 year, $8 million, to back up Drew Brees once again. He actually was thinking about mulling about signing with the Dolphins, decided not to, decided to come back and back up Brees for another year. Running back Latavius Murray as well, 4-year, $14.4 million for Murray after he played the past couple years in Minnesota after being a Oakland Raider. So the Saints, they'll be fine as well. They'll probably be back in the thick of it as well next year in the playoffs. They got screwed out of the playoffs this year, I thought. I think a lot of people thought that, but that's why they play the games. There's nothing we can do about it anyway, so we just got to move on and live our lives how we're living them. So they still got Breeze, still got Alvin Kamara. Yeah, they lose Mark Ingram to Baltimore, but then they re-sign Bridgewater to come in and back up Breeze once again. If Breeze goes down, Bridgewater can step in, and then they sign Latavius Murray to replace Mark Ingram. So they still got a two-headed backfield with Kamara and Murray, and then Michael Thomas at wide receiver, plus all the other Swiss Army knife type of players that Sean Payton has on that roster. So the Saints, they'll be fine. The New York Football Giants, as I said, they traded Odell Beckham Jr. to the Cleveland Browns, along with Olivier Vernon, for Jabril Peppers and Kevin Zeitler, and a first and third round pick in this year's draft to replace Odell. They ended up signing former Lion and Seahawk, Lion, and Eagle wide receiver Golden Tate, 4 years, $37.5 million deal for him. He'll be alongside Sterling Shepard. He actually put a thing out on social media that I thought was really, really funny the other day after he signed this deal. He did a spin-off of Jerry Maguire, where Cuba Gooding Jr. With Tom Cruise did the Show Me the Money, so that was funny. Go look it up on YouTube, the original, if you haven't seen it already. Maybe I'll put a little bit of a soundbite in here of that, because it's free agency frenzy. Everybody's getting money thrown their way, it seems like. But then the other, before I move on to the other New York, New Jersey team in the NFL, the Giants, they also signed Antoine Bethea to a 2-year deal. And they still have Eli Saquon, who they drafted last year, number 2 overall, and Evan Ingram at tight end as well. So I think the Giants will win more than, 4 or 6 games that they won this past year. So the Giants, they'll be fine. Go Big Blue Nation. Saquon, Rookie of the Year. So the Jets and the Giants now have actually 2 number 26 at running back. The Giants have Saquon. The Jets have Le'Veon Bell. Le'Veon Did not play at all last year with Pittsburgh, but he goes back to wearing green and white. Go green, go white, as they say up in East Lansing, Michigan, because he played his ball at Michigan State before getting drafted in the second round a couple years ago by Pittsburgh. Did not play at all last year, like I said. But another number 26 is coming to New York City. So Le'Veon and Saquon about ready to take over. Le'Veon is now a New York Jets player. So 4 years, $52.5 million for Lev Bell. The Jets also made a trade with the Oakland Raiders. Kelechi Osemele was traded by Oakland with a 6th-round pick in this year's draft for a 5th-rounder in this year's NFL draft. The Jets got Sam Darnold some weapons as well to go alongside Quincy Enunwa, Robbie Armstrong. They signed Jamison Crowder, 3 years, $28.5 million, and then wide receiver Josh Bellamy, 2 years, $2.75 million. And then, as I said earlier, the Ravens, they lost C.J. Mosley. He ended up going to the Jets. So after spending his entire career in Baltimore, C.J. Mosley goes to NYC as well. 5 years, $85 million for Mosley. Now, business is booming out in the Bay Area for the Oakland Raiders before they move to Las Vegas in a year or two. As I said, they traded Kelechi Osemele to the Jets. They got a 5th-round pick in return for him. But then they ended up replacing him with offensive tackle Trent Brown, who played with the 49ers for a little while before playing last season in New England with the Patriots. They signed Trent Brown to a 4-year, $66 million deal. And then they also signed LaMarcus Joyner away from the Rams. Safety LaMarcus Joyner, 4 years, $42 million to Oakland for him. And then wide receiver Tyrell Williams, 4 years, $44 million, as he comes over from the other LA squad, the Chargers. But business is booming. As I said, with the Raiders, they made a trade with the Pittsburgh Steelers to acquire wide receiver Antonio Brown in exchange for a 3rd and 5th-round pick in the 2019 NFL Draft. And then Antonio ended up signing a new contract, 3 years, $50 million. So Antonio Brown is now an Oakland Raider, will continue to wear number 84. The only question I have with Oakland, what are they going to do at running back? They'll probably end up drafting somebody, to be honest with you, either in the 1st round or mid-round in the draft next month. I'll stay home now. The Philadelphia Eagles and the Pittsburgh Steelers, both Keystone State members of the NFL. As I said, Michael Bennett was traded from Philly to New England, and then they ended up re-signing Brandon Graham to a 3-year, $40 million deal. And then they signed Malik Jackson away from Jacksonville after he was cut. 3 years, $30 million for him. But then they bring home wide receiver Deshaun Jackson. This was the big move for Philly. They brought Deshaun Jackson home. They traded with Tampa Bay. The Buccaneers traded him back to Philly, where his career began. He then signed a 3-year deal with the Philadelphia Eagles. And then Philly also re-signed Ronald Darby, cornerback Ronald Darby, 1 year, $8.5 million. And then they signed linebacker L.J. Fort away from Pittsburgh. So L.J. Fort goes from the western part of the state, the best part of the state, other than central Pennsylvania, to the worst part of the state, eastern Pennsylvania. So L.J. Fort goes from Pittsburgh to Philly on a 3-year, $5.5 million deal. So they still have Carson Wentz. He's coming back from injury. And then, they still have Alshon as well. Nelson Aguilar, who I believe they re-signed, if I'm not mistaken. I'd have to check with a good friend of mine on that. And then Zach Ertz at tight end. He's a damn good tight end. Broke the all-time record for most catches by a tight end in a single season this past year. So future is still bright for the Philadelphia Eagles. They got lucky, I thought, against Chicago after Cody Parkey, who ended up getting cut by the Bears. So they're looking for a new kicker. They actually had tryouts. Free beer was involved. No one made it. But the Eagles got lucky against Chicago in the wild card game, and then they lost to New Orleans the following week on the road once again. So they are 0-2 on the road in New Orleans. This past year, I wonder, and let me know down in the comments below if you guys know, do the Eagles play the Saints this upcoming year? That'd be another interesting matchup, I think. The other Pennsylvania squad in the NFL, the Pittsburgh Steelers, the team that has the most Super Bowl titles of anybody, tied with the Patriots now with 6. The Steelers, they did some re-signing, just like the Patriots and the Cowboys did. But then the Steelers went out and got wide receiver Dante Moncrief as well, and he's a good, reliable wide receiver. He'll make a lot of catches this year from Ben Roethlisberger, and he'll help out the Steelers, I think. Now, it's a 2-year deal. He played in Indy with the Colts for a little while, and then Jacksonville this past year. But Pittsburgh, like I said, they did most of their damage by re-signing some offensive linemen. They did trade away Marcus Gilbert, as I said at the start of this, to Arizona for a 6th-rounder this year. So they re-signed center Marquise Pouncey, restructured his deal a little bit, re-signed Ramon Foster along with defense tackle Daniel McCullers, re-signed Eli Rogers as well, another 2-year deal. So you got Ben Roethlisberger, quarterback still, James Conner, running back. You got Jalen Samuels as well, who came on somewhat as a scat back, I call it. Last year, rookie out of NC State. Juju's the number 1 receiver now after they traded AB. They still got James Washington, rookie last year out of Oklahoma State, won the Fred Biletnikoff Award at OK State. So they got Moncrief now, Eli Rogers. They also re-signed Anthony Chickillo, who almost went to Foxborough to play with the Patriots, decided to stay home. And then they signed Steven Nelson away from Kansas City. Cornerback Steven Nelson comes to Pittsburgh, a 3-year, $25.5 million deal. So I think Pittsburgh will be fine. They always try to build their team up through the draft as well, so we'll see what they do end of April as well. So move out west now with a couple NFC West teams, the San Francisco 49ers and the Seattle Seahawks. Before I get to the end of this, finally, that's probably what everybody's thinking, I'll end with the Buccaneers, the Titans, and the Redskins, as we only have 5 more teams to go through. The 49ers, as I said, they franchise tag kicker Robbie Gould, and then Dee Ford, who was also franchise tagged, as I said, by Kansas City. He was franchise tagged by the Chiefs, and then he was traded to San Francisco, and then he signed a new 5-year, $87.5 million deal. So Dee Ford, now a 49er. They also signed Quan Alexander away from Tampa Bay, so San Francisco's defense looking pretty damn good. Tevin Coleman, Kyle Shanahan, the head coach now in San Francisco, former offensive coordinator in Atlanta. Tevin Coleman was one of his running backs. They signed him away from the ATL. Tevin Coleman, former Indiana Hoosier and Falcon now, signs a 2-year, $8.5 million deal with the San Francisco 49ers. And they just signed wide receiver Jordan Matthews as well to a 1-year deal. Seattle Seahawks franchise tag on defensive end, former Michigan Wolverine Frank Clark. They got some protection for Russell Wilson, 2 guards in Michael Potty, 1-year deal for him. He stays out west with the Seahawks. He was a former first-round pick by the 49ers back almost 10 years ago now, I believe. Played for the Cardinals as well. So after his Seahawks days are done with, might as well go out and play with the LA Rams. They're the only NFC West team left. However, the Seahawks, they re-signed DJ Fluker, 2-year deal, former first-round pick as well. He played for the Chargers for a little while. It really didn't work out there. Giants really didn't work out either. So hopefully, with him re-signing in Seattle, they'll have some more protection for Russell Wilson and company with Chris Carson and Rashad Penny alongside CJ Prosise in the Seattle Seahawks backfield. And then they did re-sign linebacker Michael Kendricks as well, but he will be heading to the state pen here in a little while. Might be a federal penitentiary, one of the two. Either way, Michael Kendricks is going to prison. He will be sentenced in about a month, end of April, right before the draft, due to his involvement with insider trading. He was a Cleveland Brown this time. Last year, they cut him. He signed with Seattle right before the season started, or during the season, one of the two. And he played decent when he played, but he'll be going away, and who knows how the hell long he's going to be in there. So they re-signed him. I don't know the length of the deal. All I know is that the Seahawks re-signed Michael Kendricks. So he could be in there a year, could be in there 2 years. Wish him the best, but who knows if he'll still be a Seahawk once he comes out. Hard to tell. Probably not, but who the hell knows. Tampa Bay Buccaneers, Tennessee Titans, and Washington Redskins before I wrap it up. So thank you guys for your continued support. Thank you for listening. Be sure, if you haven't done so already, to like, follow, and subscribe to Gridiron Ring and myself, Cool Hand Luke 96, on social media. As always, the links are in the description below. So Tampa Bay, new head coach with Bruce Arians. They were about ready to put the franchise tag on tackle Donovan Smith, and then ended up re-signing him to a 3-year, $42 million deal. So Penn Staters that are out in free agency this year making bank, so congrats to them. He was actually a former second-round pick, first pick in the second round back in 2015 by Tampa Bay, and he's been protecting Jameis Winston ever since, protecting his blind side. So Winston's still there, still got Mike Evans, another Penn Stater, and Chris Godwin. I know I don't really like to go on and on about that, but I am, because like I said, they're making bank. They're signing all these damn contracts, as all these players are. So, congrats to everybody. But then the Buccaneers, they also signed Brashard Perriman, former first-round pick out of Central Florida, to the Baltimore Ravens also back in 2015. So it seems like everybody that was drafted in 2015 or later is signing a free agent deal this year, because normally, deals are 3, 4, 5 years. You don't really see anybody sign a big 8, 9, 10-year deal anymore. However, Landon Collins, I'll get to him here in a second, he signed a 6-year deal with division rival the Washington Redskins after getting drafted out of Alabama to the New York Giants a couple years ago as well. So Perriman really didn't work out in Baltimore or Washington or Cleveland. He goes to Tampa Bay now with the Bucs. Tennessee Titans, they signed Adam Humphries away from Tampa Bay. So wide receiver Adam Humphries, 4-year, $36 million deal with Tennessee. They actually just traded for Ryan Tannehill as well. So Tannehill will back up Marcus Mariota. Like I said earlier, Dolphins really don't have anybody at quarterback. We'll see if they do within the next couple weeks of free agency and then in the draft. I hope they don't draft somebody like Drew Lock, or I'm trying to think who else is out there. If they got Haskins, I think I'd be all right with that. If they got Murray, if they made a deal for him, or a good veteran quarterback, I think I'd be all right with that, depending on who it was. But I just don't hope they do the same damn mistake they made with Ryan Tannehill. I think Drew Lock's a lot like Ryan Tannehill, and Tannehill, he was a wide receiver, turned quarterback at Texas A&M, first-round pick by the Dolphins, just traded to Tennessee, like I said. But I think Drew Lock, you look at the comparison, Drew Lock, I put him with Ryan Tannehill for some reason. I just do. And I think the Dolphins, if they did draft Drew Lock, I think they'd be making another mistake. As I said time and time again, I think the only way the Dolphins are getting back to the Super Bowl and going undefeated once again, I know these were two different times. They didn't have Marino when they went undefeated. They had Bob Pagrisi. But Dan Marino's one of the best quarterbacks of all time, if not the best, according to some people. And probably the best Dolphin player of all time as well. But the only way the Dolphins are going to get back to being good is if, in my opinion right now, Dan Marino is their starting quarterback. And he could probably still sling it, I bet, but he's not going to be coming back anytime soon. So you just got to move on and, deal with it. The Titans, they signed another former Indiana Hoosier, Roger Saffold, to a 4-year, $44 million deal. He's played his entire career with the St. Louis, Los Angeles Rams. So he comes back to the Midwest now, the Southeast a little bit, to Tennessee. And then Kenny Vaccaro, safety from Texas, played with the Saints for a while, then went to Tennessee. He just re-signed 4 years, $26 million. And then, like I said, I really don't like to go on about my favorite teams, all the time, but the Tennessee Titans now have 3 Penn State defensive linemen on their D-line because they just signed Cameron Wake, Derek Wake, as we knew him here in Happy Valley back in the day. Cameron Wake, he signed a 3-year, $23 million deal after spending his entire career in the NFL with the Dolphins, played in the CFL for a while as well. But Cameron Wake, now a Tennessee Titans, they have Cameron Wake, Daquan Jones, and Austin A.J. Johnson. So now the final NFL team. I know I'm coming up on an hour here. And then I'm going to go over some players that are still left that I think teams should sign here within the next couple weeks before the draft, or maybe even after the draft leading into training camp and next season. So the Washington Redskins, the 32nd team in the NFL, I don't think they'll be expanding anytime soon. But their big move was signing safety Landon Collins to a 6-year deal worth $84 million. As I said, he was drafted out of Alabama a couple years ago to the New York Football Giants. Spurs the Giants to go south to D.C. to play with the Redskins. So Case Keenum then, he was traded by Denver to Washington for a 6th-round pick this year. And then Washington also re-signed running back Adrian Peterson to a 2-year deal worth $8 million. So they still have AP. Darius Guice going to be coming off an ACL injury. Case Keenum looks like he's going to be the starting quarterback unless they draft somebody. And then they beat him out. Who the hell knows? But there's some quarterbacks still on the market that I think maybe the Redskins, the Dolphins, a couple teams that need a backup could go out and target. Blake Bortles being one of them was cut by the Jaguars. Actually, they thought he was going to be the franchise quarterback when they drafted him back in 2014. We've seen how that's worked out. He actually signed an extension last year. 1 year later, they cut him. But he's actually going to be meeting with the LA Rams on Monday. So maybe Blake Bortles will be a Ram backing up Jared Goff next year. We'll have to find out and see. Somebody who I think could go to Miami, though, a good veteran quarterback, good veteran experience. He would be able to lead this team into the future if they draft somebody, and that would be Sam Bradford. I know he really didn't play that well in St. Louis, LA. He played well in Philly and then Minnesota when Teddy Bridgewater went down, when they traded for him. And then he was in Arizona last year before getting benched for Josh Rosen, the rookie out of UCLA. So Sam Bradford, I think the Dolphins should probably look at just to get a veteran guy in there and have a chance to win, because you're going to have a better chance to win with Bradford than Jake Rudock and whoever the hell else they have down in South Beach. So Sam Bradford, A.J. McCarron's still out there, Mike Glennon, Mark Sanchez might be a guy some teams go after. Josh Johnson as well. Speaking of Josh Johnson, he was actually the first overall pick in the Alliance American Football League draft this past November, but then was signed by the Redskins. So maybe he goes back to D.C. And competes with Case Keenum. That wouldn't be a bad decision by him, I don't think. And some of these guys, too, if they don't get re-signed by NFL teams, they might go the AAF, they might go the XFL next year as well. Who the hell knows? But Mark Sanchez, he's been around. He's a decent quarterback. He's not bad, but he's not anything special. Blake Bortles is better than him, along with Joe Flacco's better than both of them combined. So Flacco, he can throw it down the field. He'll win some games this year with Denver. But actually have some breaking news right now as well. And it relies with football. It revolves around football, but not with the NFL. I just talked about the AAF, the Alliance American Football League. I will be doing some more games, obviously, on YouTube live, doing some games coming up soon. Don't know when, so be sure to subscribe. But Johnny Manziel, Johnny Football, has just signed with the Alliance of American Football League. So I don't know what team. I just know that he has signed with the AAF and will be a member of the Alliance. Because he was actually just cut by the CFL, and he will not be playing up north across the border anymore in his career. Could play in the XFL next year as well. Who the hell knows? All I know right now is that Johnny Manziel's in the Alliance American Football League. So we'll see if we'll have to see if he's still good, I guess. It's been a while since he's played. So Marshawn Lynch still out there. I know I'm rambling on here. And I'm sorry for that. Excuse me. But Marshawn Lynch, J.J. C.J. Anderson, who really came on in the playoffs for the Rams, he's still out there. Doug Martin, LeGarrette Blount. The Raiders ended up cutting Jordy Nelson after they traded for Antonio Brown, Randall Cobb, another former Packer, Michael Crabtree, Chris Hogan, Penn State lacrosse player, Mike Wallace, Kelvin Benjamin, Demaryius Thomas, Des Bryant. There's a shit ton of good talent out here that hasn't been signed yet, and these guys could have been signed throughout this recording. I don't think so, because I haven't got anything other than Manziel. There's Jared Cook out there. These guys could get signed while I'm uploading it or while it's saving. So if there's somebody that I did not mention that you think obviously would be a good fit somewhere, or you have breaking news where he's signing, whatever the case may be, let me know down in the comments below. Once again, guys, thank you for your support. Thank you for listening. Jared Cook, Tyler Eifert, actually, he's going to be re-signing with the Bengals. Antonio Gates still out there. The Chargers actually brought him out of retirement last year. We'll have to see if they do it again. But they got, what's his name, coming back, Hunter Henry coming back at tight end next year. He was actually injured this past year, so that's how they got Gates to come back. Matt Khalil, both Khalil brothers. Matt and, what's his brother's name? Either way, both Khalil brothers, can't think of it right now. Let me know in the comments below if you know. Both Khalil brothers on the market. Stefan Wisniewski, Jonathan Cooper, Justin Houston, and Eric Berry are probably the two top guys that remain unsigned, both former Chiefs. Ezekiel Ansah, if he can stay healthy, former top pick by Detroit a couple years ago. Clay Matthews, he is not a Green Bay Packer anymore. He's out there. Bruce Irvin and Ndamukong Suh, Muhammad Wilkerson. Who else is here? Manti Te'o. He's probably still looking for his damn girlfriend. That's basically it. I mean, Sebastian Janikowski, one of the kickers. Cody Parkey. Stephen Gostkowski as well. The Patriots will probably bring him back, I bet. George Iloka. Dominique Rodgers-Cromartie, he's actually coming out of retirement. I did see that to sign with the Washington Redskins. So Rodgers-Cromartie and Landon Collins now in the secondary in D.C. Haloti Ngata. There's a shit ton of good players still out there that remain unsigned. So, like I said, if I forgot to mention somebody or didn't mention them at all, let me know down in the comments below. Thank you guys for listening to my thoughts and opinions, just discussion-wise on the NFL New Year with free agency frenzy, as they like to call it, as I said, with all the transactions, all the free agent signings, re-signings, all the trades that have taken place the past couple of days. So once again, guys, thank you for listening. Be sure, if you haven't done so already, to like, follow, and subscribe to Gridiron Ring and myself, Cool Hand Luke 96, on social media. Some upcoming events, WWE WrestleMania weekend in about a month, a little less than a month, first weekend of April. I'll be having videos out for that. Stay tuned for my Raw and SmackDown recaps as well. Go check out recent videos from WWE events that I've attended, including a full match with Randy Orton and AJ Styles. WrestleMania weekend, though, April 5th, 6th, and 7th. I'll be on YouTube here doing live reactions, play-by-play of NXT TakeOver Blacklist, and then WrestleMania 35 2 days later, Sunday, April the 7th, and then Monday Night Raw and SmackDown Live the following 2 nights as well. So be sure to like, follow, and subscribe on social media. And what do you think the best signing so far, best transaction overall, is during the NFL New Year? You can let me know down in the comments below, or you can go vote on the poll on both Facebook and Twitter for the next couple days. So, yeah, like I said, Alliance American Football League, they just signed Johnny Football, Johnny Manziel. Don't really know a whole lot about it yet, but I'll have to look into it. And I'll be on YouTube doing more live reactions, play-by-play of that league coming up sometime soon as well, like I said. WWE, and then obviously the NFL Draft as well, end of April, a little over a month away, and then the real football season with both college and the NFL cannot come anytime sooner. Thanks for listening. Like, follow, and subscribe on social media. As always, links are in the description below.